You've heard of people who are hypersensitive maybe to light or sound or specific textures, but imagine being intensely physically repelled by cold air.
Yeah, not just, getting a shiver.
No, this is a visceral, almost nauseating aversion, like the way you'd react to a genuinely bad odor or a foul taste. That is the trauma marker we begin with today.
And this isn't some eccentricity he's trying to explain away. The narrator is presenting this as a permanent physiological consequence of the most horrific, the most scientifically extreme circumstance they ever encountered.
Right. This is his justification.
Exactly. It's a confession meant to explain this debilitating physical weakness he now lives with.
And what makes this deep dive so disturbing, really, is that this whole sequence of events didn't unfold in, some spooky abandoned house or a lab in the middle of nowhere.
No, not at all.
It happened in the glare of mid-afternoon, right in the middle of the clangor of a metropolis, New York City, spring of 1923. It's the utter ordinariness of the setting that makes the eventual revelation so hard to process.
That juxtaposition is absolutely key. Our source material is structured as this really detailed, meticulous witness statement. It treats the account as literal, factual history.
So our mission today is to treat it the same way. As an unfolding reality, we're going to unpack every single chilling step, analyze the core scientific theory at play, and try to understand the terrible price paid for defying death.
Absolutely. So let's set the stage. New York, 1923. Our narrator is doing some dreary and unprofitable magazine work.
Which is a nice way of saying he's broke.
Broke, yeah. He's looking for the absolute cheapest, most tolerable housing he can find. And he lands on West 14th Street, right in the heart of the city, in this massive 4-story brownstone.
This setting gives us such a strong visual. It's a classic remnant of, Gilded Age opulence, but it's all faded now, stained and forgotten. You can just picture it. The original mahogany and marble fittings now sullied, the stucco cornices all over the top.
And that smell of mustiness mixed with strange cooking from all the other tenants.
Exactly. It's shabby, a little depressing, but, it's clean enough.
It establishes this baseline of predictable urban decay. And our narrator gets a small room, a third-floor hall room. The main sound is just the constant din of streetcars outside. And that's when he meets the landlady, Mrs. Herrero.
She's described with such striking detail, if not very flatteringly. Slatternly, almost bearded.
A Spanish woman who is, thankfully, commendably, unannoying. She just leaves him alone, which is all he really wants. The mediocrity of the environment is so intentional. It's the perfect stage for something utterly unnatural to just erupt.
And it does. About 3 weeks in, it's evening, around 8 o'clock, and the narrator is suddenly hit by this pungent, unmistakable smell of ammonia.
And it's not just a smell. He looks up, and the ceiling right in the corner is wet and dripping.
That drip is the first crack in reality, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the physical sign that something, chemical, something mechanical is happening directly above his head.
So he rushes down to get Mrs. Herrero, who is immediately frantic. She rushes upstairs, and this is where we get the first fragmented clues about the mysterious man living above him, Dr. Munoz.
It's through this leak that he's introduced, framed by her sort of defensive explanation. And she gives these key contradictory facts about him.
First, the malady. She says he is too seek for doctor himself, seeker and seeker all the time.
And then his regimen, which is just bizarre. He takes funny-smelling baths and, crucially, cannot get excite or warm.
And here's the technical detail that just changes everything. He uses massive amounts of sal ammoniac to keep himself cool.
Which isn't just a random chemical, is it? Sal ammoniac or ammonium chloride that's used in refrigeration and cooling processes.
Exactly. This tells you immediately that his need to lower his body temperature is not some light medical suggestion. This is an industrial chemical imperative.
The implication is terrifying. His body is rejecting a normal temperature. He requires massive continuous cooling, which is why we have the leak. And this is all happening in total isolation.
Complete isolation. He never goes out, except maybe up to the roof. He relies solely on Mrs. Herrero's son, Esteban, for everything: food, laundry, chemicals. He does his own housework in his little room. He is totally self-contained.
So it's living like a hermit, but not by choice. It's a pathological necessity.
But here's the bizarre contradiction. The thing that should have been a massive red flag for the narrator, Mrs. Herrero insists he's a renowned physician, great once, who just recently helped an injured plumber with incredible skill.
So he's a master of medicine.
Who vehemently refuses any conventional medical help for his own clearly dire condition.
What was he protecting? Was it a secret? Or was it just pride?
A genuine physician would know the limits of self-treatment. His refusal suggests his condition or the methods he's using are completely outside the bounds of normal medicine.
And the narrator just kind of dismisses it. He feels this detached pity for an eminent person who has come down in the world.
He chalks it up to eccentricity. And as he's cleaning up the chemical mess, he hears it. Not the doctor himself. His footsteps are soft and gentle, but this low, ominous hum. A gasoline-driven mechanism coming from upstairs.
That sound. That is the mechanical heartbeat of this whole operation.
It is. That's the first real proof that this isn't just a sick man with weird habits. Heavy machinery, the kind of pump you'd need for large-scale refrigeration, is required for his survival.
So his little room isn't a bedroom at all.
It's a laboratory. It's a life support system. And that mechanical necessity just completely undermines the pity the narrator felt. This isn't passive illness. It's active technological defiance.
And the narrator still doesn't quite get it. He knows this man is strange, isolated, relying on industrial cooling, but he still just feels pity. That detached stance is about to be violently shattered.
Because the only reason he ever actually meets Dr. Munoz is a medical emergency of his own.
Right. Late June, one of the hottest days of the year, and the narrator has a sudden, agonizing heart attack.
And in that moment of sheer desperation, all he can think of is the story about the injured plumber. So he drags himself upstairs and just locks on the door. No time for dignity, no time for fear.
And the shock of crossing that threshold is profound. Outside, it's oppressive heat, dingy hallways, musty air. Inside,
An abrupt rush of cool air.
Oh, my.
So cool the narrator starts shivering instantly. It's completely unnatural. It's a physical shock before he even processes what he's seeing.
and what he sees is just as jarring. You step out of this squalor, this cheap boarding house, and into opulence. Mahogany furniture, sumptuous hangings, high-quality old paintings.
This is not the room of a man down on his luck. This speaks of birth, cultivation, and discrimination. The narrator realizes immediately that the tiny room above his was just the lab, the noisy, messy part. The doctor's actual quarters were this spacious, climate-controlled gentleman's study.
The temperature is the first big warning sign. It's so cold, he later estimates it at 55 or 56 degrees Fahrenheit, that it just violates the natural order of a hot summer day. And you can hear the pump below, confirming the source of it all.
The cold air is the physical manifestation of the doctor's entire pathology. But then, let's look at the doctor himself, because despite the superior breeding evident everywhere, the narrator feels an immediate and intense repugnance.
Describe him for us.
He's short, but exquisitely proportioned, dressed impeccably in formal clothes. He has this high-bred face, a masterful expression, an iron-gray beard, an aquiline nose. He looks like a figure of serious authority, an old-world aristocrat.
But the aversion is instant, and it's physical.
It is. His complexion is lividly inclined, this bloodless, bluish-gray look. It just screams circulatory or respiratory failure, and the hands that touch the narrator are ice-cold and bloodless-looking.
It's the combination, isn't it? The superior appearance on one hand and these very visible signs of severe, maybe terminal illness on the other. That's what triggers the revulsion.
The narrator himself theorizes that it's the abnormality. As humans, we're programmed to detect things that deviate from the norm, and a man operating at 55 degrees in July is fundamentally deeply abnormal.
But the repulsion gets pushed aside pretty quickly because Munoz's medical skill it's undeniable.
Oh, absolutely. He understands the heart attack instantly and ministers to it with the swift, precise deftness of a true master.
And while he's treating him, he starts to speak. And he lays out his entire philosophical framework in this finely modulated, though oddly hollow and timbreless voice.
He presents himself as a benevolent fanatic, and this is where we really have to pause and dig into his core belief.
Which is a total rejection of death.
A total rejection. He is the bitterest of sworn enemies to death. He says he has sunk his fortune and lost all his friends in a lifetime of bizarre experiments devoted to death's bafflement and extirpation. This isn't just medicine for him, it's a war.
A personal war against mortality itself. But it's not a spiritual war, it's scientific, or at least pseudoscientific. He lays out this radical theory that will and consciousness are stronger than organic life.
Which is a massive claim. And you have to ask, right, if his will is sustaining him, why does he need a giant mechanical pump in the next room? Where does the science stop and the sheer force of consciousness begin?
That's the crucial tension. He says that if a body is originally healthy and carefully preserved.
Hmm.
It can maintain a kind of nervous animation through a scientific enhancement of will.
And he says this is possible even with most serious impairments, defects, or even absences in the battery of specific organs. The will is the driver, but the science, the preservation, is the necessary vehicle.
He makes this truly chilling half jest. It's almost a boast. He says he could teach the narrator to live, to have some kind of conscious existence without any heart at all.
It's the ultimate self-referential statement. He's justifying his constant need for cold. He's explaining that a rise in temperature would be fatal because the cooling system, powered by that pump, is the only thing maintaining his current precarious state.
So he's confessing, in a way. He's saying his body isn't sustaining him, his will and his mechanics are.
That's it. For anyone listening, the key takeaway is that he's claiming the nervous system, powered by sheer concentration and chemical aid, can override the complete failure of major organs. The cold is necessary to slow the metabolic rate and prevent the inevitable decay of the tissues.
And the narrator, miraculously cured, leaves that shivery place completely converted. He's a disciple and devotee. The power of the cure just blinds him to the grotesque implications of the doctor's theory.
And that initial trust, that gratitude, it solidifies their relationship. Even though the narrator has to bundle up in a heavy overcoat just to visit him, they start having these frequent, regular calls, listening to his tales of secret research and almost ghastly results.
He's entered the orbit of a man who's actively experimenting on the very edge of life and death.
And during one of these talks, we get the key piece of history, the backstory that explains the origin of Munoz's condition. The fate of his colleague, a Dr. Torres of Valencia.
This is the moment that grounds his fanaticism in real trauma, isn't it?
It is. Munoz shared his earliest experiments with this man, Torres, who nursed him through a huge critical illness 18 years prior. The very illness from which Munoz's present condition stems.
And he tells the narrator, whispering, that no sooner had Torres saved him than Torres himself just died. He implies the strain of the process was too much. He says the methods of healing had been most extraordinary, involving scenes and processes not welcomed by elderly and conservative Galens.
Okay, let's just break that sentence down. Conservative Galens. He's invoking Galen, the great classical physician. He's saying that mainstream traditional doctors would be horrified by what was done.
He's saying the methods required to save him were so extreme, physically and ethically, that they literally killed the practitioner who performed them.
It sounds less like nursing and more like some macabre, traumatic scientific intervention.
It definitely paints a picture of a procedure so aggressive and shocking that it caused the death of the doctor performing it. Munoz was brought back from the brink 18 years ago, using methods so extreme that his colleague couldn't survive the strain.
And this past trauma illuminates the present paradox. As the weeks pass, despite the narrator's cure, Munoz begins to show this undeniable deterioration. His livid complexion gets worse, his voice becomes more hollow and indistinct, his coordination, it's slackening. He's physically crumbling.
But, and this is the incredible irony, his mind and his will are not failing.
No, the defiance is waxing, it's getting stronger. He seems to be summoning an even greater force of resistance against the decay. The physical structure is giving way, but the consciousness driving it is becoming sharper, more focused, more desperate.
This creates a gruesome irony in their conversations, and the narrator admits that his original repulsion starts to come back. The illness is accelerating, and it's demanding these increasingly extreme, almost ritualistic measures to mask the collapse.
And those measures become these bizarre sensory caprices. He develops an intense fondness for exotic spices and heavy Egyptian incense,
Making the room smell like the vault of a sepulchred pharaoh. That detail is so significant.
It's a deliberate masking attempt, right? The scientific preservation is failing to stop organic decay, and there's a growing offensive odor coming from his ailment. The incense, smelling of death and ancient preservation, is trying to cover up the smell of present decay.
It suggests the tissues are beginning to fail.
And his demands for cold accelerate dramatically. They started at 55 degrees, now he modifies the system to achieve 34, then 40, and eventually a terrifying 28 degrees Fahrenheit.
Well below freezing.
Well below freezing. The narrator even helps him fit heavy hangings to block the freezing air from bothering the next tenant.
The cold is no longer just therapeutic. It's become necessary for structural integrity.
A normal human body cannot survive at 28 degrees. For Munoz, this sub-freezing temperature is the only thing physically holding his tissues together. It's like a constant chemical cryoseal.
And the growing horror isn't just contained to the two of them. It starts to spread through the house. Mrs. Herrero cuts off contact. She crosses herself when she sees him. Esteban, the boy, refuses to run errands anymore.
The doctor's refusal of outside physicians now flares up into these terrifying rages, confirming he is hiding something that absolutely cannot be witnessed. The physical decay, the stench, the extreme cold. It's creating an atmosphere of pure panic.
And while this is happening, Munoz is preparing for the end. He's writing these long, sealed documents, instructing the narrator to send them after his death to these strange, distant people.
Lettered East Indians, a French physician who is generally thought to be dead, about whom inconceivable things had been whispered.
It just reinforces his connection to this radical, secret fringe of medical science. He's only communicating with people who might actually understand the nature of his existence.
And the climax of this outward horror, just before the final breakdown, happens in September. An electric desk lamp repairman, a man who had survived the sheer terror of the Great War unharmed.
A hardened veteran.
A hardened veteran. He takes one unexpected glimpse of the doctor and immediately collapses into an epileptic fit.
I mean, let's just pause on that. If a war veteran, a man desensitized to suffering and violence, is instantly reduced to a seizure by the mere sight of Munoz, what must he have looked like?
His appearance must have been so profoundly distorted, so close to the border of decay, that it constituted an active physical threat to the observer's sanity. And Munoz, ironically, has to treat the fit while desperately keeping himself hidden.
Proving that just being seen by him is now lethal.
All of this rising tension, it all culminates in mid-October. The horror of horrors came with stupefying suddenness.
The sound of the pump, the mechanical heartbeat that sustained him,
Eh?
it just stops.
The machinery fails. The pump on the refrigerating machine breaks down at 11 p.m., and that is an immediate death sentence.
For Munoz, who needs sub-freezing temperatures to maintain his decaying physical structure, the cooling process is going to cease within hours. His whole defiance of death is subject to the limits of simple engineering.
And the doctor's reaction is not despair. It's this terrifying, almost mechanical rage. He curses in a lifeless, rattling hollowness. His rage and fear swell to grotesque proportions.
The narrator's frantic efforts to fix the pump are useless. They bring in a mechanic who just confirms it. They need a new piston, and they have to wait until morning.
This mechanical failure just immediately exposes his ultimate physical vulnerability. That sheer force of will that was supposedly sustaining him cannot overcome the rising heat. The rising temperature is literally going to unravel him.
And during one of these spasms of fear, Munoz rushes into the bathroom and emerges with his face tightly bandaged.
That bandaged face is the final barrier. The narrator never sees his eyes again.
It's a desperate, pathetic attempt to maintain the last vestige of the civilized man while his decay just accelerates. He knows the limits have been reached, and he has to hide the evidence.
And he orders the narrator to keep him supplied with ice from all-night stores, retiring to the bathroom where he can immerse himself and just buy a few precious hours.
So the narrator's night becomes this frantic, desperate ice siege. He's constantly running back and forth from drugstores and cafeterias, dumping the ice outside the closed bathroom door.
And just hearing this restless splashing and the doctor's thick voice croaking, more.
The power dynamic has completely inverted. The esteemed, terrifying physician is now just a desperate, unseen entity, wholly dependent on the narrator for a supply run that is fundamentally futile.
And the warm day breaks, which just compounds the crisis. Esteban, instructed by his terrified mother, refuses to help.
So the narrator, driven to exhaustion and panic, makes a critical, desperate move. He hires a replacement, a seedy-looking loafer on 8th Avenue, just to keep the ice flowing while he goes on the main mission, finding that pump piston.
This just emphasizes the extremity of the situation. The narrator is so far past rational thought that he delegates the care of this horrific patient to a complete stranger, hoping the loafer's need for money overrides his common sense.
And then he's plunged into this agonizing, breathless, foodless quest across Manhattan, dealing with futile phone calls and the slow, grinding progress of the subway and streetcars.
The hours just slip by. He finally finds a supply house far downtown, and at 1:30 in the afternoon, he returns to the boarding house with the piston and 2 mechanics, just praying he was in time.
But the atmosphere he returns to is not relief. It's black terror.
The house is in complete turmoil. Lodgers are praying, babbling incoherent, frightened stories. And the narrator realizes immediately that the moment he delegated that job, control was lost forever.
The critical moment.
Yeah.
The hired loafer had fled. He ran off screaming and mad-eyed after his second delivery of ice.
He must have seen it. Whatever final, inevitable collapse Munoz had tried so hard to hide behind that bathroom door, the loafer saw it.
The war veteran was shocked by a glimpse. The loafer was driven mad by the full realization. And now the door to Munoz's room is fastened from the inside, but the silence is broken by a nameless sort of slow, thick dripping.
The liquid trail has begun.
The narrator, Mrs. Herrero, and the two mechanics, all with handkerchiefs pressed to their noses against the now unmasked odor, they prepare to breach the room. The landlady uses a wire to unlock the door. The hot afternoon sun is now blazing into that opulent room, providing light for the horror.
And the final scene is just one of absolute visceral devastation delivered purely through physical evidence. The first thing they see is a dark, slimy trail leading from the open bathroom door.
That trail signifies the complete physical collapse of his preserved body, doesn't it?
Right.
The tissues just failing under the pressure of the rising heat.
It leads first to the hall door, then to the desk. And at the desk, a terrible little pool had accumulated. This pool is the grim punctuation mark where the doctor made his final, desperate confession.
The writing instrument was a pencil, wielded by an awful blind hand, and the paper was hideously smeared as though by the very claws that traced the hurried last words.
It's an image of a consciousness fighting its final battle, a creature in its ultimate spasm of panic, its physical disintegration, making the very act of communication a terrible, terrible struggle.
And then the trail continues, and it ends, unutterably, on the couch.
And the narrator makes a conscious, deliberate choice not to describe what he saw there. He says he cannot even bring himself to think of the object.
That refusal is maybe the most powerful moment in the whole account. The narrator, who has recounted every scientific grotesque detail up to this point, he just draws a line.
He's indicating that the final sight on that couch transcends description. It transcends human comprehension. It is a moment of pure, unmediated physiological trauma. The preservation failed completely.
While the landlady and the mechanics are rushing off to the police station to babble their incoherent stories, the narrator stays behind. He deciphers the noisome scrawl on the stickily smeared paper. This is it. The final, definitive confession.
And the note is written in this context of absolute chaos. You have terror inside. And the clatter of cars and motor trucks ascending clamorously from crowded 14th Street outside. It is the final testament of Dr. Munoz.
Let's decode it. Starting with the immediate cause of his failure, written in a hand that was literally decaying as it wrote.
He writes, "The end is here. No more ice. The man looked and ran away. Warmer every minute, and the tissues can't last."
It confirms the chilling mechanism of his existence. The tissues, the very material of his body, were only being held together by the cold. Once the temperature rose, the physical structure just failed.
Then he confirms his radical theory to the narrator, his last disciple. "I fancy you know what I said about the will and the nerves and the preserved body after the organs ceased to work."
He was living proof of it.
He had achieved it, a state where his nervous system, fueled by consciousness, could sustain animation even after organic failure. But the theory had a fatal flaw. He says, "It was good theory, but couldn't keep up indefinitely. There was a gradual deterioration I had not foreseen."
And that deterioration explains everything. The increasing lividity, the loss of coordination, the desperate need for spices and incense to mask the growing odor of his own decay. The preservation was always temporary, a decades-long stay of execution.
He then returns to Dr. Torres, finally explaining the tragic fate of his colleague, the moral horror that came with his own salvation. Dr. Torres knew, but the shock killed him. He couldn't stand what he had to do. He had to get me in a strange, dark place when he minded my letter and nursed me back.
The full admission of trauma. The procedure 18 years ago was so extreme, so ethically and physically horrifying, that it killed the physician who performed it.
Munoz didn't just have an illness. He was forced to undergo a method that required him to be hidden away in a strange, dark place because his state was likely already monstrous even then.
And then, the final, horrifying revelation. The line that cements his entire existence as an impossible scientific triumph.
And the organs never would work again. It had to be done my way, artificial preservation, for you see, I died that time 18 years ago.
He was a conscious corpse, maintained by science, by mechanics, and by sheer defiant will for nearly 2 decades. The man who treated the narrator's heart attack, the man he befriended, was clinically dead years before they ever met.
His entire life was an unprecedented 18-year experiment in sustained nervous animation within a decaying frame.
The narrator, horrified but believing every word, performs one last act of devotion. He burns the paper to a crisp.
Which isn't just protecting a secret, is it? It's an act of self-preservation, ensuring the world doesn't have to face the impossible truth of what he witnessed, and ensuring the police can't use the confession to understand the unspeakable thing on the couch.
And the final analysis brings us right back to the beginning, the narrator's initial premise. He confesses that whether he truly believes the incredible words now, in the sober light of reflection, he honestly do not know.
But the physical consequence, that remains immutable.
This is the lasting trauma, manifested as a permanent, peculiar physical aversion, that sounds like scientifically induced PTSD.
He hates the smell of ammonia, which symbolizes the noxious chemicals of that unnatural preservation.
And he grows faint at a draft of unusually cool air. The coldness that was the condition of Munoz's existence has become the symbol of the most profound horror the narrator has ever known. It is the scar of the impossible.
This entire deep dive has been focused on Dr. Munoz, this man who, through sheer force of will and radical sustained science, maintained a conscious existence for 18 years after his body had organically failed. It's a terrifying exploration of where scientific obsession and psychological resistance can lead when they're completely divorced from natural law.
It's a profound exploration of human will versus the finality of mortality. The most terrifying realization isn't the final physical disintegration that we only glimpsed. It's the raw, unyielding power of a consciousness that simply refused to surrender.
Munoz proved that the mind can fight death far, far beyond the point of organic life. And it just begs the question, if the will can sustain a body that should have failed decades ago, what truly is the line between life and preserved consciousness?
What limits do we really place on the relationship between mind and body? And what horrors might be possible if the mind refuses to accept finality? If a scientifically preserved consciousness can persist against all natural law, what kind of terrifying, decaying intelligence might still be out there, perpetually clinging to its existence? That's the chilling, lingering question this horrific confession leaves us with.